This initially was the plan, and I'd like to thank Jane Fenton, who works here in the social work division, who's helped set this up. The plan originally was to have a debate, so there would have been a couple of speakers in favour of the named person, a couple of people speaking against the named person. But try as I might, and I can guarantee I tried about 10 different people to come here and justify the named person. Not a single one of them was able to come this evening. He says with a hint of skepticism, because this has happened on a number of occasions to me when I try and get people to come and justify what is a government policy, which is interesting, I think.
Mr Swinney talks a lot about tweaking it, but the reality is that a fundamental root and branch redraft is needed to make this comply with the Supreme Court ruling, both in terms of the named person itself and the GIRFEC approach that Parliament has championed so wholeheartedly. By pushing for the continuation of the named person provision and the GIRFEC-led information gathering and sharing processes, it seems that the Deputy First Minister is in danger of encouraging unlawful practice by state bodies. Nicola Sturgeon's apparent adoption of the approximately 15,500 children in care, addressing them in a recent letter as My Children, gives an indication of the worrying degree to which the state has already appropriated the guise of parent. But taken together with the state's bullish intent in subverting parents in the raising of their own children through the named person and GIRFEC legislation, this sets us on a dangerously authoritarian path that is incompatible with the rights of a free society.
Our campaign against the named person have always argued that actually this piece of legislation is illegitimate and it's illiberal. Now, it's illegitimate because it's illegitimate interference by the state in family life, and it's illiberal because it's undermining parental authority. Limiting the intrusion of the state into private family life and the upbringing of children is an important principle in democratic societies. Democracy depends on the recognition that adults are autonomous, self-determining individuals who are responsible for themselves, their families, and for society. They're responsible enough to take on the task of actually electing government and deciding on what sort of democracy should prevail in their societies. And essential to that is the recognition that parents should be autonomous in relation to themselves and their own families. It's a very important safeguard, as Lesley pointed out, against the imposition of state ideology and state control over children. As far as I'm concerned, this is really demeaning of adults and parents. It infantilizes them to say that parents cannot cope with challenges without third-party intervention, without state-appointed agents coming in to give support and guidance. I think we should strongly resist and argue against this idea that parents are incapable of ensuring that their children are healthy, happy, and secure, or for that matter, that they're incapable of accessing the services their children need. And I think we need to insist that parenting is about the relationship between parents and their children. It is not this sort of formulaic prescription of good parenting, or this prescription of what well-being means. It's about that relationship we have with our children. And sure, we all make mistakes as parents, right? But we learn through our mistakes. And we learn through the establishment of relationships with our own children. And in that process, we secure our authority within the home and as far as our children are concerned.
Many of you might have come tonight and might still think, I don't understand what's wrong with this thing, because isn't it all about helping children? Aren't we all responsible for children, and isn't this something we should all be interested in? So I'm going to take you in a short talk, I'm going to take you on a tour behind some of the good intentions that we're told are motivating this legislation, because I think it's important that we understand what the rationale and the evidence is for the named person project, what lies behind it. Because irrespective of the Supreme Court rulings and the reiteration of that, the ideas underpinning the project, the named person project, have and are having an impact for the worse on children's lives and family and community lives and on the public purse in Scotland. So the Supreme Court judgment put us a spoke in the wheel, but the government's made it very clear that it understands the judgment against them is purely technical and that they intend to continue to drive forward with in the same direction. We've got rising numbers on child protection registers, rising number of children in care, and over the last 4 years we've had a doubling of the number of children who are categorised as having additional support for learning needs. A doubling. I mean, that is phenomenal. And when you look at the figures, you can go on the government website and look at the figures, and where the doubling has happened is in the category of other and in the category of children who have a child's plan. So in other words, it's not children with actual diagnosis of ADHD or autism or disability or these are children that are, you can't actually dig beneath that apart from more children being processed through this system. And in fact, there's fewer additional sport teachers and resources, so more children are being categorised. Now, in Highland, it's just under 1 in 2 children, so nearly half the children in Highland where they have really gone for it with the named person. And my theory is that what's happening is that all those referrals for concern or make child plans or have some referral at the child, and it's boosting these figures of children with additional support needs. We have totally got the eye off the ball. You might say to me, well, correlation, you know, the introduction of named person and GIRFEC, correlation is not causation, and I accept that. But you'd have to say that we are definitely not doing the right things because nothing in what is happening looks like or is prevention to me. There is no public housing programme, there is no child health programme, there are none of the things that you would hope and want to see that would actually be about prevention. The named person can't provide a hot meal, the named person can't provide a pair of shoes, a warm home, they can't insist that benefit sanctions are removed, they can't say no to a young mum doesn't have to work and doesn't have to spend 36 hours a week doing forced work in a voluntary organisation or whatever. So they can't do that, but they can spend time doing scenario wheel assessments of 300 well-being indicators and 220 risk indicators. Sue White remarked, in Heckman's work, which is, I didn't have time to talk to you about that, but there's a logic that brackets out socioeconomic disadvantage or even ordinary adverse life events in favour of a concentration on parenting behaviours. And this is, unfortunately, the early intervention and prevention rationale which the Scottish Government has adopted with the Children Act of 2014. Child rescue and not social justice, and it doesn't work.